Welcome to the Country Watch Political Intelligence Briefing Quick Hits, a weekly briefing of hot stories across the world in brief. I'm Denise Youngblood Coleman, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief and Senior International Affairs Analyst at Country Watch. This week, Ukraine is the featured country, although Russia factors highly as well. Since March 2021, Russian President Vladimir Putin has been amassing troops along its western border with Ukraine. In fact, there are more Russian troops in the region now than in the run-up to Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. Now the question was arising as to what Putin's endgame might be with these latest moves. Respect for Ukrainian sovereignty has not been something that the world could assume from the Russian leader. In fact, Putin's apparent imperialistic ambitions to reconstitute lost Soviet territory has not been limited to Ukraine and extends to the Baltic countries. One possibility is that the buildup of Russian forces on the border with Ukraine was intended to deliver a message from Putin to the Biden administration in the United States and Western European capitals that Russia regards Ukraine to be within its orbit. Another possibility was that the buildup of Russian forces on the border with Ukraine was a precursor to the introduction of Russian peacekeepers there to protect Russians living in occupied Donbass. They could then use any provocative action that occurs in the region as a reason to defend Russian citizens there. A third rationale is that Moscow is placing pressure on Kyiv to implement the 2015 Minsk framework, which would convey special status to occupied Luhansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine in exchange for a permanent ceasefire and pullback of the military from the region. For its part, Ukraine is forging ahead with a robust diplomatic overture to allies seeking assurances that other countries would support Ukraine's territorial integrity. President Zelensky has pleaded with the international community, and particularly the United States, to offer assistance and support in more than just statements. He said Ukraine needs more than just words. President Zelensky has also called for Ukraine to be granted immediate membership into NATO in an interview. But such a move would be sure to incite Putin, who would rail against any expansion of NATO so close to its borders. On April 20th of 2021, President Zelensky gave a nationwide address, which was broadcast across Ukraine, warning citizens of the possibility of full-fledged war with Russia and taking a resolute tone in saying that Ukraine was ready for it. Zelensky declared, "Our principle is simple. Ukraine does not start a war first, but Ukraine always stands to the last man." President Zelensky also called on his Russian counterpart, President Putin of Russia, to reverse his apparently aggressive stance and to meet with him for de-escalatory talks. The timing of President Zelensky's address was not accidental, as it came ahead of President Putin's annual State of the Nation address scheduled for April 21st on 2029. The fact that Zelensky switched from Ukrainian to Russian in his address only accentuated the obvious conclusion that part of his intended audience was the Russian president. On April 22nd, a day after, following massive military drills, Russia's defense minister ordered troops amassed near Crimea and eastern Ukraine to withdraw and return to their permanent bases in the final week of the month. Troops were ordered to leave their heavy weaponry in Western Russia in readiness for further drills later in the year. For now, this was being regarded as a welcome de-escalatory development. Staying in the region, in April 2021, Russians took to the streets en masse in support of jailed Kremlin critic and opposition politician Alexei Navalny, who was poisoned on a flight in August of 2020. Navalny, who was arrested and imprisoned later in 2020, when he returned to Russia, was carrying out a hunger strike aimed at forcing Russian authorities to release him from prison. The reality was that Navalny was not necessarily a rallying opposition figure in Russia until he was targeted by the Kremlin establishment. While his anti-corruption stances have attracted attention, until recently he has been more of a polarizing opposition figure than a galvanizing one. But the attempted poisoning, followed by the arrest of Navalny, were being regarded as a clear overreach of power by Russian authorities, spurring Russians to take action. The Kremlin's hardline attitude towards him has fueled Navalny's popularity and made it more difficult for President Putin and the Kremlin to control the protest movement. That effect was in full view in April of 2021, when thousands of Navalny's supporters defiantly took to the streets of Moscow and St. Petersburg and the far east of the country, risking arrest to protest his detention. In the African Sahel country of Chad, President Idriss Déby Itno died of injuries sustained during battle fighting rebels in the northern part of the country. President Déby, who had been in power for 3 decades, had been re-elected to power only 10 days prior and was in the early phase of his 6th term in office. With President Déby's death, there was a sense of uncertainty about the future course of the country and anxieties about a possible power vacuum. But the late president's son, Mahamat Idriss Déby Itno, was soon named to be the country's transitional leader. The naming appeared to be done by the military and came with the dissolution of the government and the parliament, thus suggesting that the real power broker in Chad was the military council. As well, the existing constitution was abandoned and an interim charter would be drafted. Furthermore, the military declared that free and democratic elections would be held after an 18-month transitional period. The late president was a military man who rose through the ranks of the army and embraced the military culture. It seemed that with the power moving to the younger Déby, a 4-star general himself, the influence of the military on the power structure of Chad would be maintained. Chad's main opposition parties reacted to these developments by denouncing them as an effective institutional coup d'etat. Finally, elections were held across the world. In Djibouti, long-serving incumbent President Ismail Omar Guelleh, who was first elected to power in 1999, was again re-elected in 2021. According to the Interior Ministry, the incumbent president garnered more than 97% of the vote share. Yes, that's right, 97%. While Guelleh has garnered more than 75% of the vote in every presidential election he has contested, this particular performance, without any meaningful opposition, made the election more of a confirmation of his leadership than an actual contest. In Benin, incumbent President Patrice Talon had won a decisive victory against his 2 opponents with 85% of the vote. Yes, that's right, 85%. In Cape Verde, Prime Minister Ulysses Correa y Silva's Movement for Democracy, or MPD, consolidated its control over the government. Meanwhile, in Peru, the presidential election in that country would go to a second round between Keke Fujimori of the right-wing Popular Force and Pedro Castillo, a member of the socialist left-wing Free Peru Party. For more information about these and other stories, read my weekly political intelligence briefing and my coronavirus report, both of which are accessible from the front page of the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. Thank you for your time. Have a great day, and remember that we live in an interconnected world.